Voices that help us see ourselves not first and foremost as black or white or Asian or Latino, not as gay or straight, immigrant or native born, not Democrat or Republican, but as Americans first, bound by a common creed. Voices Dr. King believed would have the final word. Voices of unarmed truth and unconditional love. And they're out there, those voices. They don't get a lot of attention. They don't seek a lot of fanfare. But they're busy doing the work this country needs doing. I see them everywhere I travel in this incredible country of ours. I see you, the American people. And in your daily acts of citizenship, I see our future unfolding. I see it in the worker on the assembly line who clocked extra shifts to keep his company open, and the boss who pays him higher wages instead of laying him off. I see it in the dreamer who stays up late at night to finish her science project, and the teacher who comes in early, maybe with some extra supplies that she bought because she knows that that young girl might someday cure a disease. I see it in the American who served his time, made bad mistakes as a child, but now is dreaming of starting over. And I see it in the business owner who gives him that second chance. The protester determined to prove that justice matters. And the young cop walking the beat, treating everybody with respect, doing the brave, quiet work of keeping us safe. I see it in the soldier who gives almost everything to save his brothers. The nurse who tends to him till he can run a marathon. The community that lines up to cheer him on. It's the son who finds the courage to come out as who he is. And the father whose love for that son overrides everything he's been taught. I see it in the elderly woman who will wait in line to cast her vote as long as she has to. The new citizen who casts his vote for the first time. The volunteers at the polls who believe every vote should count. Because each of them, in different ways, know how much that precious right is worth. That's the America I know. That's the country we love. Clear-eyed, big-hearted, undaunted by challenge, optimistic that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. That's what makes me so hopeful about our future. I believe in change because I believe in you, the American people. And that's why I stand here as confident as I have ever been that the state of our union is strong. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
A very, very forceful speech by the president, hitting so many issues, clearly designed to try to solidify his legacy. He was blunt, some not so subtle, very tough criticism of Republican presidential candidates on several very sensitive issues. Jake Tapper, this was a speech the president clearly wants the American public to remember.
This is the speech in the bookend in the film of Obama. This is the end speech. This is the one that you run at the very end after you've started the movie, the drama, with those early day speeches, perhaps the one from the 2004 Democratic Convention when he's first introduced to the people. It was a very forceful defense of his legacy, an instruction or lecturing or fact-checking from, I'm sure, his point of view, talking about how the United States of America is the strongest, most powerful nation in the country, in the world. How we have the strongest, most durable economy in the world. And in many ways, a direct repudiation of some of the language we're hearing, some of the rhetoric we're hearing on the campaign trail from Republicans. You heard allusions to remarks Ted Cruz made about carpet bombing civilians in President Obama's characterization, how you need more than tough talk. It doesn't wash. You heard a lot of references to Donald Trump and the president's characterization of demonizing, going after the people based on their religion and their race. There was even a shot or two at other candidates on the campaign trail, like Chris Christie has referenced to the fight against ISIS being World War III. So a strong defense of himself, couched in an optimistic way, talking about the way he looked at the world, and also a very harsh judgment at some of the language and some of the reaction he has heard to his presidency from Republicans on the campaign trail.
He spoke for almost exactly 1 hour. Dana Bash, you listened to every word. He did acknowledge near the very end that one of the few regrets of his presidency was that the rancor and suspicion between the parties here in Washington has gotten worse instead of better during these past 7 years.
That was one of the most fascinating and telling moments from my perspective of the entire speech. I have watched the Obama presidency from the perch of Capitol Hill and watched what everybody thought would be potentially a new era in Washington back 7 years ago when he came in, unravel slowly but surely, and as he said, gotten worse. First of all, just on a personal level, you don't hear this president talk about regrets very much, especially in such a forum like this, but also because he's right that things got worse. I will give you a little bit of a reality check, having witnessed it and sort of been a part of it for the past 7 years. It went both ways. I think the irony is the fact that the president started out with a supermajority of Democrats in the Senate and a majority in the House, entire Democratic control, almost at the end of the day, hurt him because he didn't have to reach out to Republicans. He was too worried about his own party, and then things sort of went downhill with, politically at least, with, of course, him pushing his health care bill. So there's no question he is right. Things are very much worse. And if you go back in time and think about, as you know, we heard the hope and change when he came in here, it is ironic and certainly noteworthy that he admitted that it is a regret.
Anderson, earlier today, the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, like Donald Trump, said the state of the economy is a mess. The State of the Union right now, the State of the Union, the president says, is strong.
And not only that, he trumpeted the unemployment numbers, comparing it to what it was that he inherited when he took office. I want to bring in our panelists. Chief National Correspondent John King, political commentator Michael Smerconish, Chief Political Analyst Gloria Borger, Senior Political Commentator, former Obama Senior Advisor David Axelrod. David, let's start with you. I mean, I think for a lot of people who voted for this president, perhaps what they heard tonight harkens back to what they heard back in 2008 on the campaign trail.
No, this was pure Obama. I mean, really what he was saying is we live in times of great change. We're a strong, resilient country. We can either embrace that change and adapt to it and grab it, make it an opportunity, or we can allow it to be used to tear us apart. And that's really the essence of it. You talked about transformational president. He's a president in a time of change. And we've seen we can either go backwards and resort to tribalism and fight with each other, or we can move forward with confidence. He was urging that second course.
And as Jake said, I mean, definitely commenting on a lot of the rhetoric we're hearing on the Republican side.
Right, absolutely. Taking on Donald Trump, taking on Ted Cruz on the issue of a call to carpet bomb civilians. That was a clear reference to Cruz. I think this was Barack Obama's version of his view of American exceptionalism. He's always been criticized by Republicans for not believing America is exceptional. And tonight, he made the case about why America is exceptional, as he also set the agenda for the next Democratic nominee.
I never really understood that, because I don't know anybody who believes more deeply in America. He believes that he's lived it.
But here's the thing about Obama. He's not going to be president anymore, but this was a speech for the next Democratic president, because his legacy depends on a Democratic president getting elected. Because if there is no Democratic president, all those executive orders go away. Obamacare can be undone. And he understands that, and I think this was sort of taking it a step to the future and saying, this is the course for you. And in it, I must say, it sounded a little bit like he was channeling Bernie Sanders on economic policy.
a very political speech. The language wasn't terribly harsh, but as Jake noted, and Gloria noted, definitely going after Donald Trump several times, going after Ted Cruz specifically, Chris Christie. More broadly, going after the Republicans on just economics. He said they're wrong. What they're selling you is fiction. On climate change, keep denying it if you want, but you are wrong. And leadership in the world and the things he has done on the global stage, he says they are wrong. And essentially, reject them. That is what the president was saying without saying it so outright, is reject them. Here's my big question. Can he change minds at this point in his presidency? I posed the question because he's been underwater in his approval rating for 29 months now, on average. No question this will rally the Democrats. And he was essentially telling the country, elect a Democrat. Didn't name them, but elect a Democrat. But can he break through at this moment? Or not only because his standing is down, because the clock is ticking on him, 1 year left, but because the campaign to replace him is so competitive, is so exciting, is so interesting, and is getting so much of the attention. And we will, by tomorrow afternoon, be talking about the latest poll in Iowa and New Hampshire. Can he change minds?
John, was he speaking to the emerging American majority that elected him twice by significant margins? I think that's what he was doing.
Michael, how do you think America heard this?
I think the most important part of the speech, first of all, I like the approach instead of just rattling off a laundry list. And he did get most of the things in that you'd hear in the laundry list. I like drilling down on several big picture items. The one line that sums it up for me, public life withers when only the most extreme voices get attention. I was so pleased that he addressed fixing the political system as his fourth point, because without doing that, frankly, nothing else matters.
You know, I think that the president really understands, to John's point about changing people's minds, this is not going to be a persuasion election. This is going to be a mobilization election. Nobody's mind's going to get changed anymore. What the president is trying to do is say, you people who supported my coalition for the next Democratic nominee, you've got to be there.
I don't want to be Pollyannish about this, but I honestly think he was speaking beyond the election. He was saying these are the challenges that are going to define our future, and we need to meet them with confidence. We need to embrace change. We need to re-knit together our American community. And we need to face, and we need to revitalize our democracy.
Let's also bring in Paul Begala, Amanda Carpenter, Van Jones, Mike Rogers, just to get your quick feedback on what you think.
This was Obama at his best. You had the 2008 idealism plus the 2012 fighting spirit. And those two things together, that's when Obama is at his best. I thought it was so important that he stood with the Muslims. I thought it was so important that he chastised Republicans for putting America down and building ISIL up. He said, look, you don't have to build them up, just take them out. And I thought that was very, very good. I also thought he snuck something in there that could prove very, very important. He gave an olive branch to Paul Ryan for reaching out to the poor. Now, remember, Paul Ryan said that makers versus takers line. He said you have makers in the country and you have takers, talking about poor people on welfare. Paul Ryan apologized for that, didn't get any credit for it. And Paul Ryan is reaching out to poor people, and this president reached back. That is a big deal. That plus criminal justice, which Paul Ryan wants to work on, you might have a pathway through. That was important tonight.
And obviously, we're going to be hearing from the Republican side, the Republican response to this. Amanda Carpenter, former spokesperson for Ted Cruz. What did you hear tonight?
Well, looking at the arc of Obama's presidency when he came into office in 2009 with the supermajority in Congress, and now when you listen to the applause, it's so much quieter because there's fewer Democrats in the chamber. And so looking at where he's left the Democratic Party as a whole. He lost the Senate. He lost the House. They lost a dozen governor's seats. They've lost hundreds of seats in the state legislature. What does the Democratic Party become? Right now, it's fighting to be led by, a socialist from Vermont, and Paul may hate this, but a former president's wife. They are in shambles, and I don't think Obama can pick up the pieces. He's broken the White House for the Democrats.
Also,
and I don't think
senator.
They'll get it back.
I think Hillary Clinton's more than that.
Reasonably accomplished.
Well, I'm just saying that the farm team is depleted.
I have to be a fan of her husband, too.
Paul, what'd you hear?
He seems like a nice guy. I thought it was a terrific speech, first. I will quibble a little with Axe. He's probably right and I'm wrong. He's looking directly at the election. And I think, you could see this about Ted Cruz and this about Chris Christie. This was a rejection of Trumpism. He referred at the very top of the speech to political hot air. And anyone he said claiming that America's economy in decline is peddling fiction. And he went through each one of these. Whether it was climate change, whether there's a notion that...
Let's play that soundbite and then we'll continue with Paul.
I told you earlier, all the talk of America's economic decline is political hot air. Well, so is all the rhetoric you hear about our enemies getting stronger and America getting weaker. Let me tell you something.